20 minutes before the hour. 866-99-SIRIUS, 866-997-4748. Joining us now, the president of the NAACP, our brother Derrick Johnson. Derrick, good morning to you, man. God bless you. How are you this morning?
Good morning. How are you doing this morning, Mark?
Just fine, man. Always a pleasure to have you on board with us. First of all, Derrick, the NAACP is raising concerns and looking into the situation in Libya, correct?
We are. That's a tragedy. We call on the UN to step in and not allow history to repeat itself. People should not be exploited for free labor under the banner of slavery or cheap labor under the banner of capitalism. And anytime a country is participating in sanctioning that type of activity, that is not a healthy environment, because once it begin to take root in one country, it can go to another country. And African Americans, we know all too well all of the negative impacts of systems of slavery.
So you called on the UN to investigate, correct?
That's absolutely correct. As soon as we heard about what was taking place on last week, we immediately called on the UN to investigate. You know, the NAACP, we would not exist as an organization. There would have never been a civil rights movement. The struggles that we look at today would not be our concern if it was not as a result of the system of government-sanctioned slavery. And although this is an African nation, we also denounce any attempt to exploit and abuse people under a system of government-sanctioned slavery, or any slavery for that matter.
866-99-SIRIUS, 866-997-4748. Derrick Johnson, the president of the NAACP, on board with us. I noticed also on Friday, did the American Airlines announce an overhaul of its discrimination complaint process, correct?
That is correct. We had, I consider, a productive and fruitful discussion with the leadership of American Airlines, myself, Tamika Mallory, Melanie Campbell, and others. We sat and met with them. We had a follow-up, and as a result of what has taken place, the advisory that we issued, and talking with them, they have agreed to a set of things to try to make their corporate environment friendlier to African Americans, friendlier to their employees, but more importantly, to respect their customer base, who happen to be African Americans as well. So we will continue to monitor that process. Hope to continue to work with American Airlines to create a corporate partnership that's productive and respectful of the African American community and our dollars.
All right. So that too is also very, very important. I noticed that and there's a list of 4 actions, folks. And if you're watching us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, make it plain. Join us here with Derrick Johnson. It includes conducting a diversity and inclusion gap analysis led by an independent firm, reviewing its diversity and inclusion practices, also implementing company-wide implicit bias training to examine ways to recognize and begin to correct implicit bias, overhaul customer discrimination claims process, and create a new customer resolution team, and lastly, sharpen its focus on team member concerns by increasing awareness of work environment policies in the process to report concerns and improve its internal oversight and resolution of team member discrimination claims. You know, obviously, Derrick, a lot of concern, a lot of coverage of sexual misconduct in the workplace. But this is clear, and we're glad American Airlines is taking this step, but this is necessary because not only is there still sexual misconduct and sexual discrimination in the workplace, but there's still a whole lot of racial discrimination in the workplace too, isn't it?
You know, it's the way, you know, I'm coming to the racial. Racism has been with us for a while. W.D. Du Bois says that the question of the 21st century, like it's going to go beyond the 21st century, is the question of race in this nation. And that's real. People walk into a room with all the biases. And when you are leveraging your biases and you are operationalizing those biases through your power, then we have a problem when it's based on skin tone.
Yeah.
Now, when we pivot, and let's look at how the intersection of racism and sexual harassment and pedophilia intersect.
Okay.
That when you have a pedophile in Alabama, you create a false equivalency between a pedophile and a sexual harasser. Not saying that one is better than the other in terms of how you address it, but you got to be much more aggressive in protecting children from pedophiles. And you move that needle to the Senate, and you have an individual who admits to sexual harassment. And when you move that needle to the House, you have an individual who has served this in Congress over 50 years, and there's a call for him to step down, and there's no call for the Senate member to step down at the same level, nor is there a call for the pedophile to step out of the race.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's when racism intersects.
Right.
And it's concerning the treatment between how we look at Congressman John Conyers and Joe Moore and Al Franklin.
Right. You're right. There's a double standard. I was just saying before you came on how, Derrick, it is very, very likely that John Conyers is going to announce he will not seek re-election today. And I was just describing how you have, and it really is interesting, we know about Roy Moore because these women had the courage to come out and tell their stories finally. That's why we know about Roy Moore. That was not partisan. These were his victims. The partisanship came in when Republicans decided they would retaliate by trying to expose Al Franken and John Conyers. That was partisan. And then those two names began to dominate the news, and then ultimately the latter, John Conyers, took over the news cycle because he's black, and there were calls for him to resign. There weren't calls for Al. Not a single member of the House or Senate called on Al Franken to resign. And now we see the plan worked because the Republicans rode it out. They let it run its course, and they stood their ground. And now they, as of yesterday, not only do you have Donald Trump's endorsement, but you have money going back into Alabama. And so all they did was ride it out. And now who's the one that the very morning after they released the money back to Roy Moore, you've got John Conyers announcing at 10:15 this morning that he's not going to seek re-election.
Well, I think the most frustrating thing for me is the false equivalency.
Mm-hmm,
you cannot equate sexual harassment with all of these bad things, and it must end with pedophilia.
Yeah.
And see, the media has conflated the conversation and not addressed that this man stalked children so much so that a mall banned him from coming to the mall, and he was a practicing attorney.
Yeah. That's right.
So it's two different conversations that's been conflated in a way in which the media is complicit in this, and we have to begin to address the seriousness of how individuals, corporate medias are controlling a narrative which would allow a pedophile to serve in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, you're right. And one of his other accusers went on record on video last night, talked about a relationship that they had when she was 17 years old and he was in his 30s, as a matter of fact.
It's almost undisputable what this guy's done. Yes, everyone is entitled to due process, but you won't give Congressman Conyers the same due process And you have this guy who will go from no support now all the way to support because it has nothing to do with the protection of children. It's about raw power.
Yeah. Derrick, Derrick Johnson, president of the NAACP. Derrick, you're in Mississippi, from Mississippi, and right there next to Alabama. They're going to vote a week from today on Roy Moore. Joy and Reed, who's going to join me on the air tomorrow morning, folks. Be sure to stay tuned and be tuned in the morning. She wrote a piece about really getting a head start, saying don't blame black voters if Roy Moore wins. Already the narrative is being put in place that African American turnout is going to make a difference, and African American turnout or lack thereof could cause Roy Moore to win. Being right there in the South, what's your take on that? Is this about us doing what we ought to do, or is this about white voters not doing what they should do?
So first of all, you can't excuse away ignorance with lack of black participation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our participation don't dominate white folks' ignorance when it comes to being honest about what they support or what they don't support.
Yeah.
And if the citizens of Alabama could, in good conscience, recognize who he is, but because of their cultural pressures, be unwilling to do what's right by children in that state, not black children, their daughters, and say we don't support this cultural behavior. That's not a black issue. That's not the problem of the black community. That's a psychology that said that these individuals are deranged. Something is wrong here. And so I don't even like to have a conversation when we talk about election that it's because blacks didn't turn out is the reason why somebody else didn't win. No, it's a psychological profile of individuals who would vote against their interests because they don't want to be outside of what cultural pressures been put on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go and support a pedophile. I have two daughters, so this is personal to me. But at the same time, African American support is going to be crucial. But the Democratic Party's investment in black infrastructure to get that support is lacking. The Republican Party investment for any black infrastructure to turn votes out is lacking. And so we have a cultural issue with whites in Alabama and across the South. But then we have a structural racial problem in how the resources for elections are allocated to African American communities. You can't parachute kids into our community and expect us to fall in line. You can't buy a whole bunch of media and not invest in black radio and expect us to fall in line. You can't try to undermine our leadership until you need our leadership, and then 2 weeks out you try to rush and hug, embrace, and have press conferences and expect the outcome is going to be any different than what you've been getting.
Well put, my brother. That's where it's at, folks. 866-99-SERIOUS. That being the case, though, we do need you to get out and vote. We know many of you will. If you know loved ones in Alabama, be sure to reach out to them and encourage them to get out to vote. Also today, it is imperative. Also today, I mean, and let's be honest, in spite of everything Derrick has said and the take for granted relationship we've had with the Democratic Party and many of our institutions over the years, when we have led, others have been helped, even whites. Because we led what was going on in Alabama, beginning with Rosa Parks, who was a secretary for the NAACP. Let's not forget that. She wasn't random in a vacuum. Rosa Parks was a member of the NAACP, the mother of the modern day civil rights movement. So when we've led, others have benefited. So if we lead on this, actually will be doing something on behalf of young people who have been victims of Roy Moore. See, the young people today are victimized by this because they're witnessing us as adults, or some of those, not us in particular, not Derrick and me, but many of these other adults supporting someone who's a pedophile or actually a hebephile because of his infatuation with teenagers. So, folks, get out to vote. Also, get out and vote today.
Mark, understand that this race is not about Roy Moore and Doug Jones. This race is about a national budget over $1.5 trillion.
Right.
That's what this race is. It's a national race.
A deficit brought on by this crazy tax bill. Also today, we got to go, but also vote today in Atlanta for mayor. Get out and vote as well. That's very, very important. Derrick Johnson is the president of NAACP. Share this video with others. Share it on your Facebook. Tweet it out. Retweet it. Always good to talk to our president. Derrick, thank you, man.
Thank you.
All right, enjoy your day. Take care now. We'll be back, folks. Sirius XM Progress 127. Get woke. Get ready for impeachment. Resistance Radio. This is MIP.